think, Richard, the base of it is the success of the vaccine rollout program, firstly in the UK, and I think increasingly across Europe. What we believe is that we think the travel restrictions will be removed on intra-European travel, short-haul flights within Europe for the months of certainly, possibly June, but certainly July, August, September, the peak of the summer, European summer holiday season. We think there will be no hotel restrictions, no quarantines. There will be reasonably free movement of people travelling around the European Union for European Union citizens.
In that case, there's also the EU Green Pass, which is coming along, which will allow those who are vaccinated to have easier access to travel. Do you support that?
I always get worried when the EU governments introduce something. Like, I think what's likely to happen is that governments will accept vaccine certificates, so everybody will have their individual vaccine certificate either loaded up to their mobile phone or something else. I'm not sure there'll be a pan-European sort of green pass. I'm not sure we'll have time to put it in place. But certainly anybody traveling with a negative PCR test or a vaccine certificate, I think there will be no restrictions on them in Europe during July, August, and September.
But you have now integrated a digital wallet into your app. I'm wondering, are you reinventing the wheel since IATA, which a member, but IATA is doing Travel Pass, and there's already Common Pass?
Yeah, but I mean, we wouldn't want to wait for IATA to get anything done. Like, IATA tends to be very slow moving and deals with the world airlines. We think within Europe, the European governments, particularly the tourism governments, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Greece, and to a lesser extent France, will accept visitors on short-haul flights coming from the UK and the rest of Europe, as long as people have either a negative PCR test or a vaccine certificate.
Right, but by requiring a bespoke uploading, don't you just make it more complicated? I mean, if there is an industry standard, albeit it'll take a few more months to get there, if Travel Pass is the industry standard, aren't you better off just going with that because it's easier? You have your certificates and your records in one app that everybody can access.
See, Ryanair's already done that. I mean, we have it on the one app on the Ryanair app. We're not sure we need to wait for IATA to produce something.
No, but a British Airways, a Ryanair customer today can't use that app upload on another airline. And surely the idea is to make it simpler, to have one repository.
But Richard, why would any Ryanair customer ever want to fly with a high-fare airline like British Airways when they can fly all over Europe at very low fares and on-time flights on Ryanair?
Your summer schedule, I just chose to ignore you on that one. I find that the best way. Your summer schedule essentially ramps up to quite a dramatic scale. You're pretty much flying nearly 85% of your previous schedule.
That's pretty true. I mean, at the moment we're doing about 5% of our schedule in March. We think that ramps up to about 10% in April, probably 20-25% May. We hope 40% June, and then July, August, September, we think we're running somewhere between 60 to 70%. It could be 55, it could be 75. But we think there will be a big upward spike in Europe in July, August, September because of the vaccine rollout.
How difficult will it be to get the aircraft back into flying condition and the crews, who I know have continued to do their recurrent training, but how much of an operation will it be to get back up and running?
In our case, it won't be very difficult because I think, as far as I'm aware, one of the few airlines that have kept all the aircraft current through the last 18 months. We've been flying aircraft on a monthly basis, in some cases even empty, with keep pilots and cabin crew current and to keep the aircraft current. We haven't mothballed any of our aircraft, and that's important to us because we want to be flexible and ready to go as soon as we can restart carrying.
Do you have capacity availability so that if the summer turns out to be better than you thought, you can bring in more aircraft and ramp up even further?
Yep, we can go almost up to 100% of pre-COVID normal, which would be, in our case, about 14 million passengers a month. We don't expect to get there. We think through July, August, September, we'll be operating something of the order between 50 to 70% of normal. That's still carrying about, between 8 and 10 million passengers monthly. You
have been critical of the regulators and the individual governments in the way that they put in place travel bans, restrictions, etc., etc. Do you fear that the lack of coordination now on the opening will create a whole set of new problems?
I don't, but I think ultimately, Rich, what happens certainly in Europe is the British have embarrassed the rest of Europe with the speed and success of their vaccine rollout program. And I think that actually will force the Europeans to get their finger out over the months of April and May to catch up. It's been one of the unfortunate experiences of the COVID thing is that the free movement of people in Europe essentially broke down. We had national states introducing restrictions. We'd like to get back to a free movement of people within the European Union, and we think it's coming in July, August, September this year.
You've got the MAX, and you bought more of them. I mean, I'd still love to know how much you paid. I'd love to know what your discount was on those Maxes that you bought at the height of the crisis.
I mean, we haven't got them yet. We're frustrated by these repeated delays. Like we're still waiting for our first MAX aircraft. Boeing are working closely with the FAA to get it certified. We had hoped that the first aircraft would be delivered at the end of March. It now looks like moving back into the first week or the second week of April. And we're very keen to get the aircraft. We think our customers are going to really enjoy these new aircraft. And yeah, you're right. We have increased the order up. We now have 210 firm aircraft deliveries, hopefully over the next 4 years. And I think, we'll be in a very fortunate position that there's huge untapped growth in Europe because a lot of airlines have gone bust or have taken capacity out of the system. And we're one of the few airlines coming with 50 incremental aircraft each year for the next 4 years, able to work with airports and with tourism regions to restore traffic and tourism.
Do you think that the MAX, it's a safe aircraft, obviously, but do you think public perception cares about that people will have forgotten? Memories are short on these things. Nobody's going to say, I'm not getting on your MAX plane.
I think people will be cautious for the first number of months, but remember the MAX aircraft has already carried over 1 million people before it was grounded. It's already a very successful aircraft. Yes, there were issues with the Malaysian and the Ethiopian accidents. They've been addressed by both the FAA, Boeing, and EASA here in Europe. And I believe not unlike the 787s, which, as you remember, had that lithium-ion battery problem when they first flew. They fixed it. It's been a very successful aircraft since, and I believe the 737 MAX will do likewise.
I noticed your new bases, your expansion. You're wasting no time, which I mean is what to be expected of you. You wouldn't not to waste any time. I'm wondering, is this opportunistic? Is this spotting where others have gone out of business, routes have been dropped?
I mean, I think the answer to that is yes. Like we've announced new bases now in Belfast City, in Zadar, and in Zagreb in Croatia. We're talking to a number of cities who have seen their existing or their incumbent airlines go bust. We're also expanding rapidly, for example, in Italy, where Alitalia has reduced their fleet by nearly 30%. TAP have reduced the fleet in Portugal by 25%. These countries need Ryanair to respond with new routes, new aircraft, new bases. Otherwise, they'll suffer a big slump in tourism post-COVID. We want to step in and create that demand so that we revive Europe's tourism industries as quickly as possible.
The consolidation that has taken place, do you think there's more to come?
I think it's hard. There is more to come, but it will be delayed a number of years. I mean, mainly because of the lavish state aid that has been doled out across Europe in the last year or two. Will revive and sustain Alitalia, Lufthansa, Air France, KLM, Iberia. But ultimately, I think in the next maybe 5 or 10 years, more of those airlines will coalesce around. I mean, I still see Europe developing in the next decade 4 major airline groups: BA, Iberia, Lufthansa, Air France, KLM, and Ryanair. We will be the Southwest Airlines of Europe. We'll be the low-fare airline.
Are you feeling unloved that nobody gave you a bailout?
What am I? No, frankly, I mean, over the longer term, I would prefer not to have a bailout because we're always better off, to cut your cloth according to the crisis that you're presently in. And we've done that. We've worked closely with our people, with our customers on refunds, with our suppliers like Boeing on aircraft orders. We will emerge out of this with a lower cost base and a much stronger airline. Whereas I think Lufthansa, Air France, KLM will have been certainly Alitalia, will have been prevented from making the kind of labor saving efficiencies, preventing making the kind of seismic change that is necessary to survive in the longer term in this industry.
Finally, what do you think will be the longer lasting legacy? I mean, I've heard people say up to 40-50% of business travel may never come back. Leisure travel will become the new sustaining force for the industry. What do you think will not come back or has changed for good?
I am always cautious when people tell me, the business travel will never recover. I think it will, but I think it'll be much more selective. I think business travel for internal meetings, company meetings, that's gone. I mean, they'll be done on Zoom going forward. But that will create opportunities for more business travel, meeting customers, suppliers, etc. I think people will still want to do more face-to-face meetings. But I think it's undoubted that travel and air travel, certainly in Europe in the next 10 years, will become more price sensitive. There will certainly be more leisure. There will be more city breaks. And I think there will be, for the next 4 or 5 years, slightly less business travel. But that creates more opportunities for low-fare airlines like Ryanair to grow.
Right. It was obvious that you had to stay during the crisis. Now the crisis is abating. Any news on when you're leaving?
I hope not. I mean, my contract in place, I think, in 2024. We're looking forward to the next couple of years with new aircraft. We're going to work hard to improve the customer service, and we're also making a big push with our environmental agenda to become not Europe's greenest, cleanest airline, with new aircraft consuming less fuel and producing less CO2 emissions. So there's lots of exciting challenges here for the next 4 or 5 years.